distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the World Media Conference and Causa International, may I sincerely welcome each one of you to two important events: the 1983 Causa Seminar for World Journalism, and two, the European Peace Movement Fact-Finding Tour. I would also like to mention that we are welcoming two different groups of participants. On one hand, we have the distinguished members of world media who came to participate in the two events I have just mentioned, the Causa Seminar as well as the Fact-Finding Tour. In this group, we have approximately over 150 distinguished journalists and media professionals coming from the 21 different countries around the world. In many cases, you have traveled halfway around the world to come to this place. For all of you in this category, I cordially welcome you to Paris. For many, the intellectual capital of the world. For others, the capital of art, culture, fashion, and even romance. For me, coming to Paris always has a special excitement. I have visited this country and this city several times in the past. On one occasion, I brought the culture program that Larry just mentioned, known as the Little Angels of Korea, the world-famous troops of dancing and singing children, which was presented at the Olympia Theater. Each time I come here, I find that I love the city more and more. In addition, for many women around the world, visiting the glamorous city of Paris is truly the fulfillment of a lifetime dream. Now I'd like to extend my word of welcome to the other group of participants, those distinguished French citizens who came solely to participate in this Causa seminar. We have outstanding participants here from the highest academic and intellectual levels of French society. I thank you for your coming and showing a deep interest in the Causa International movement. I believe that this is of great significance that we have come to Paris and to your great country of France. The Causa movement is a new anti-communist movement operating on a global scale. Yet we do not consider ourselves to be merely anti-communist simply because anti-communism is not enough. As long as we are only anti-communist, we will continue to lose ground. Because by being anti, we will never bring victory. Anti is a defensive and a passive word. In any battle or war, you will never win with defense alone. Whether we like it or not, whether we recognize it or not, we are at war with communism. Anti-communism may postpone our defeat, but that's all. With anti-communism, victory will never be ours. What we need is a positive solution to communism, a winning worldview. What we need is an ideological offensive, because our battle is simply one of ideas, one of minds. The next 3 days, we are going to discuss this very point. How can we win over communism? How can we ourselves avoid becoming victims of ideological, the offensive of communism? How can we liberate the millions who are already victims of communism? For this reason, again, we're not just anti-communist. We're more than anti-communist. The victory over communism is Causa's goal. In this respect, there is no better place to have a Causa seminar than the great city of Paris. Paris has been playing a crucial role in modern-day political thought. Even Karl Marx came to this city to study and develop his thought. Many great thinkers and great philosophers of history came to this city to test their ideas. At this particular juncture of human history, the city of Paris has become the crossroads of the two ideologies of the world, that of the free world and that of the communist world. Paris will play a crucial role in the development of political thought in the coming century, I believe. Paris has been called the city of light. Light, as we know, represents truth. We can never forget the noble example of the French resistance who challenged the Nazi lie during the World War II. Once Frenchmen see the truth, they never hesitate to speak up. Today, Frenchmen see the lies in communism and the deception or behind the communist utopia. The new philosophers movement began here and has a worldwide impact. Today, it is not an exaggeration to say that Paris is fast becoming the anti-communist capital of the world. For this reason, it is most fitting and proper that the Causa movement has come to Paris. Without any further complication, let me say that Causa International shall be a universal name for a global movement. Causa symbolizes the common cause and aspiration of all free men. Causa shall be a God-centered humanitarian movement against the worst inhumanity in history, the national communism. But that is not the end of it. Causa strives toward the ultimate realization of the human dreams of the ideal society. In contrast to the communist utopia, Causa upholds God and freedom by the total creativity of men. When we consider the future of this world, we see so many serious problems that it is very difficult to determine which one is the worst. But I must say that the worst of all problems which mankind faces in the 20th century is the problem of communism. Communism denies our way of life, threatens our values. The goal is global conquest, and so far they are winning. It is starting to compare communism with Christianity. The Christ came 2,000 years ago, and he gave the world a powerful message of truth and love. Christianity has now become the world's largest religion and has been received by nearly 1/4 of the world's population. But it took 2,000 years. Communism, on the other hand, was only born in the last century. Yet it has come to enslave more people than are now Christians. Today, in intellectual society, it is not fashionable to speak about God. I know. So you can see it took me extra strength to stand up here. Dr. Kenneth Reichert, the leader of Education Program USA, testified after a recent Causa seminar in Washington, D.C. I quote, "For the past 20 years, I have dedicated myself tirelessly to the battle against communism. I did so under the banner of freedom. Yet, in spite of my efforts, we have steadily been losing ground. Through this Causa seminar, I come to realize why freedom was not enough. To win this battle, we must really rally in proclaiming the existence of God." Unquote. During the next few days, you'll hear the word God frequently. We speak of God not from weakness, but from courage. When we speak of God, we do so not our ritual, but our clear reason based on 20th century science and logic, and with sincerity, with heart. Furthermore, when we speak of God, we are not speaking of God of any particular religion, We are speaking of God of all religions and denominations. We examine God's existence and nature philosophically. We affirm the God of Judaism, Catholicism, Protestantism, Unification Church, and the God of all other religions are one and the same. Our purpose then is not to enter into any theological debate here, but instead to recognize the unifying factors of all religions which can lead us to a common ground in our relation with our fellow men. Causa tries to bring together all God-accepting forces, transcendent of denominations and the religions, to make one unified force. This force will be able to oppose the ungodly ideology of communism and to work toward the establishment of a new moral world. So now you can see you have come to a very interesting seminar. There are thousands of seminars going on in our world. I'm sure there are many in the city of Paris. But you may not find anything like this anywhere else. If in these 3 days you feel that you are intellectually and spiritually enriched, then we have nothing more to ask. Ladies and gentlemen, finally I say thank you for your time. And let us have the exciting 2 days together. Let us make this seminar an fact-finding tour and historical event. God bless you. Thank you very much.
It's a great pleasure and a great honor for me to be here and speak to you. I was in Europe 10 years ago, at which time a friend of mine and I took a bicycle trip through France and Germany, Luxembourg, and Italy, and Switzerland, which we enjoyed very much. And then, as now, I certainly was no master of the French language, but I very much enjoyed the French people and their hospitality. I say it's an honor. At that time, when I was enjoying that bicycle trip and other traveling that I did, I really wasn't very much aware of the situation of the world, particularly the danger that communism poses. And I know many of you were, and you were already doing things, you were already working. And for that reason, it's a very humbling experience for me to speak before you. But I'm happy to be here and to share some of the work that our Institute has done and some of the presentations that we've made throughout Latin America and also in North America. Working with Causa, sometimes I had the opportunity of speaking in Latin America before people, members of the armed forces on occasion, who the next day would be on the front line in a life or death situation. Many times with people who, like some of you, have been committing themselves to this cause for many years. So as I say, I always feel the great honor when I get up to give a presentation of this type. Now, anytime that we're talking about the development of communism, which we will use basically to mean Marxism-Leninism, we have to understand that there have been many branches in the Marxist family tree. After the death of Engels, for example, there was the split between Edward Bernstein and Lenin over the interpretation of Marxist theories. Bernstein, of course, challenged Marx's economic theories and said that socialism could be realized by democratic means. And Lenin defended Marx's economics, said that the revolution was necessary, and added that it was possible to skip the capitalist stage. Of course, Lenin prevailed in that dispute, and later Karl Kautsky, who had sided with Lenin, took an opposing position with regard to the proletariat and the necessity to make revolution or to wait for revolution. Again, it was Lenin who prevailed, but after the death of Lenin, we see another split, this time between Trotsky, who spoke of worldwide revolution, and Stalin, who spoke of the need to consolidate power in one state. Of course, in this case, it was Stalin who prevailed. And after the demise of Stalin, we find another division, this time between Mao, who in many senses, was the older brother of communism at that time and the logical successor to Stalin and Khrushchev. And of course, we know that it was Khrushchev who consolidated power, and there's no question that certain racist and nationalistic elements were responsible for that. At any rate, this is not a complete treatment of all the divisions in the Marxist family tree, but simply to illustrate the point that when we're speaking about communism or Marxism-Leninism, we're speaking about a lot of different interpretations and a lot of different variations. But nevertheless, they all contain their source in the thought and writings of Karl Marx. Therefore, in this discussion, we're going to limit ourselves to the ideas of Marx, the basic theory, which no communist or communist state denies. And we'll be talking about the personality and character of Marx, as well as, in particular, his theory of alienation, and how this theory became the cornerstone or the foundation of all his theory, and how he expanded on this theory through the Communist Manifesto and other writings. And finally, particularly in the second section of this lecture, we'll talk about the fundamental errors of the Marxist view in light of the Causa worldview. Those will be the topics that we're mainly going to cover in this presentation.
My question is, what is Causa's policy regarding right-wing authoritarian regimes which, from time to time, oppress, essentially? By the way, I'm in support of most of Causa's goals and very sympathetic to the crisis of communism. But once again, what response would you give to many or those in opposition to anti-communism who contend that the rightist authoritarian regimes are a greater threat or an equal threat to communist regimes?
Very important question. Particularly when you go to Central and South America, the great problem of military dictatorship, authoritarian regimes, and associated with the anti-communism, but doing nothing but the corrupted government, corrupted procedures, and bureaucratic government. We Causa, the communists are very likely and love to accuse us saying that the extreme right wing Causa. And when we went to Dominican Republic, one of the left newspaper painted my picture and saying, "New face of neo-fascismo." Apparently my face, I didn't know that. I'm that kind of person. Anyway, to the point, number one, Causa is not be labeled as a right-wing movement. When we go to Central and South America, we are not even using the word anti-communism. The anti-communism is as bad as communism. We declare, Causa, the war against two enemies. Communism on one hand, corruption the other hand. We proclaim Causa worldview as a two-edged sword. With one blade, one edge, we cut the communistic ideology, shred it down to the pieces. And another edge, we cut down the corruption of our society. We are not the friend of authoritarian government. We are not the friend of corrupted government. We are not here, Causa, advocating status quo. We advocate for change, but not the change that Marxists advocate. We advocate true change. We consider that true change comes from the basis, ground floor, individual men. The Causa has a policy, instead of we have accusing fingers to others, even to communism, you will hear tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, our conclusion will be that finger at yourself. Unless we change, unless I change, unless I revolutionize myself first, there is no fundamental change, no real hope in our world. Causa Seminar is not necessarily engender any particular religious movement, as I said this morning. But amazing things happening. All the religious adherents come to Causa Seminar going back to their own religion with a firmer conviction than before. The Catholic, the Catholic priest who spoke about in the movie, Ronzero in Guatemala. He said, I'm going back to my country as a better priest, better Catholic, better religious. It's just amazing.
Causa is fighting communists in 3 countries. Our presence here is a proof of that. My question is, what do Causa intend to do to fight communists in their own field? I mean, in the countries beyond the Iron Curtain.
At the moment, Causa is not doing anything particular within the Iron Curtain or behind the Iron Curtain. Our rationale is this. The communistic system within itself has the fallacy and contradiction to collapse itself within. I tell you, the system is not working. Now, some Sovietologist told me, if we leave the communist nation alone, the economy would not last more than 2 years, even less than 2 years. They have to explode within. The problem of communistic world today is the behavior of the free world, particularly leading nations such as United States, Japan, France, Germany, and England, and so forth. Because it is a lack of understanding and fear prevailing in the Western world is truly prolonging, almost sponsoring communist program today. The communistic world owes the free world about $600 billion. $600 billion. They're borrowing more every day. The free world is getting more money, more material, more technology. The Causa, at the same time, therefore, that we want to bring the new moral renaissance to the Western world first. And come up with a project such as stop the peace movement, fighting the peace movement. They initiate a project such as embargo all aid and material and scientific technology to the communist nation. These are the things that we can do it readily here, right here in our world. These will affect more quickly the destiny of the communist nation. Of course, eventually, our concern and our care and our target is the liberation of those people who are suffering under the yoke of communism, no question. But we have so much need to be done today in the Western world. And by doing so in a unified manner, we can suffocate the communist nation. Because that system, that economy you heard today, from Mr. Lay, is not working. Why it's not working? Because it's based on assumption, lie, not on the truth. And they're at the verge of collapse. There are so many crises within their system. Without Western countries in the free world helping them, they could not survive. This is our understanding and belief. So therefore, we want to do something that we can do right away
in our surrounding, in our world, in our nation. Here in Paris, for example, that's where we came to Paris. That's where we conduct this fact-finding tour. And we do many other things that is acute and important and immediate that will make an impact over the well-being and the destiny of our nation, particularly aiming at the Soviet Union. And this is where we, our Causa, feel and we're pursuing at the moment in that direction. Thank you. I hope it will satisfy your question.
Just a little bit about his background. He fought in the Korean War in 1950, hence the rank of colonel. This is where he learned the true nature of the reality of communism, and it's where he dedicated his entire life to fighting communism and to helping other people understand its philosophical and practical realities. He has served as a diplomat in the Korean embassy in Washington in the early 60s. And finally, a very important part of his vitae, and one that he is most noted for in the world press, is that he is one whose life intertwines closest with that of the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, who is the founder of News World Communications. He has been a follower of Reverend Moon for the past 27 years. In the newspaper, he is often called the right-hand man of Reverend Moon. He said before that he doesn't know if he's the right hand or the left hand, but certainly there is no other person who is more qualified to understand and to explain the workings, the life's work, the philosophy, the outlook, and just the personal nature of Reverend Moon, who is so unknown and mysterious and maligned in the world media. And of course, most importantly, he is a family man. His wife, Mrs. Pak, is here with him. Together they have created 6 very fine and brilliant children. He is also an international celebrity when he took on and single-handedly in 1968, the U.S. Congress in the so-called Koreagate hearings. You may remember that. In testifying before the Fraser Committee, he defended the honor of his country, his church, his leader, and in these hearings was given national recognition and honor by his countrymen. So he's quite a fighter. He stopped fighting militarily quite some years ago, but actually he's never stopped fighting at all. So now he fights injustice, he fights totalitarianism. You'll have a chance to come to know Colonel Pak closer than most people during these next 3 days, and I think you'll be rewarded by that experience, and you will come to see what a fine man he is.
However, it is rather no experiment for both of us because English is not my native tongue. Korean is my native tongue. I learned English. And French is not Tom's native tongue. He's American. Good American. So far in trying to put together some product, you're going to have a fine show today.
C'est un petit problème, parce que pour le colonel, il dit ma langue maternelle n'est pas l'anglais, c'est le coréen. Et pour moi, ma langue maternelle n'est pas le français, c'est l'anglais. Donc ça va être une expérience très intéressante. Vous allez avoir un très joli show aujourd'hui.
Before I go into the point, I'd like to also make understanding very clear on 3 points.
Avant de faire mes points principaux, je veux clarifier 3 choses.
First of all, our presentation here today and tomorrow will be based on philosophical viewpoint, not definitely trying to bring any theology of any particular religion or denomination. I want to make this very clear.
D'abord, ce qu'on va présenter ici, aujourd'hui et demain, je veux clarifier que c'est basé sur des concepts philosophiques. On veut vous présenter une perspective philosophique et cela n'a rien à voir avec la théologie. Ce n'est pas notre but ici de vous présenter, disons, une perspective d'une religion particulière.
This is not the intention of bringing any particular religious thought. There are philosophy here presenting designed to counter communism, Marxism, Leninism, and bring positive solution to that ideology. This is the basic purpose.
Ce n'est pas notre but de présenter la perspective d'une dénomination. Ce que l'on veut faire ici aujourd'hui, c'est de vous présenter, on peut dire, les bases philosophiques pour affronter le communisme.
The founder of this movement is Reverend Sun Myung Moon.
Le fondateur de ce mouvement est la révérende Sun Myung Moon.
But he today is truly the greatest anti-communist fighter in our world.
Mais aujourd'hui, il est certainement le plus grand des lutteurs anticommunistes dans le monde.
He also founded religion called Unification Church.
Il a aussi établi une religion aux États-Unis et dans le monde qui s'appelle l'Église de l'Unification.
For the next few hours, today and tomorrow, you will not hear anything about the unification theology such as our method of salvation, our particular interpretation of Savior, or the manner of observing a religious doctrine. That will be totally void.
Mais pendant ces journées-là, vous n'allez pas écouter la théologie de l'Église de l'Unification. Vous n'allez pas écouter, par exemple, notre interprétation du salut, ou qu'est-ce qui est pour nous un sauveur. Vous n'allez pas écouter notre doctrine.
Also, the principle we present might sound very new to you. I'm sure. Otherwise, it is very good in a way. Otherwise, we have no purpose to be here. We have nothing new to present, then we have no purpose coming to Paris.
Aussi, les idées, les conseils qu'on va présenter, peut-être vont vous paraître des choses nouvelles, on peut dire, des idées nouvelles, en fait. Mais ça, c'est très normal, parce que si on n'avait pas quelque chose de nouveau, ça n'aurait pas de sens pour nous de venir ici.
So I want you to understand, if any content I present sort of contradict your religious principle, or your doctrine, or your own understanding of God or whatever, then we say, keep yours. Don't take mine or ours. Because your religious doctrine comes first. We are here just to inspire, to stimulate your thought, not to swap any ideas or not to impose any ideas. I want to make this point very clear.
Donc, s'il y a quelque chose qu'on dit pendant ces jours qui contredit vos propres interprétations religieuses ou qui représente un défi à vos perspectives religieuses, je veux dire maintenant déjà que vous devez garder vos propres points de vue. Et ce n'est pas notre but ici d'imposer sur vous nos interprétations théologiques. Ce n'est pas notre but ici de forcer des choses quand vous avez déjà vos idées. Vous devez garder vos idées.
So far, we have been listening to Marxism, Leninism, the basic doctrine and their thought, the sort of the critique on those ideologies.
Jusque maintenant, on a écouté surtout les théories marxistes-léninistes et les critiques de ces théories-là.
So we could say, so far, part one, phase one, is sort of like a process understanding our adversary or enemy who are trying to take our value away.
Donc on peut dire que cette première partie est un effort de comprendre nos adversaires ou nos ennemis qui veulent nous priver de la liberté.
If we win, however, We need two parts. Know our enemy and know ourselves. Without these two parts, we cannot successfully win.
Si nous voulons gagner la victoire, il est très important non seulement connaître nos ennemis, mais aussi nous devons savoir qui est-ce que nous sommes. On doit connaître soi-même.
So from this point on, we're inviting you to join with us the journey to know ourselves and our potential.
Donc à partir de maintenant, on veut vous inviter de venir avec nous pendant qu'on essaie de connaître soi-même. Qui est-ce qu'on est?
Once again, welcome to Causa, and introduction to the Causa worldview.
Encore une fois, bienvenue à Causa. Et maintenant, on va écouter l'introduction à la perspective Causa.
So I said at the opening effort, the anti-communism is not enough.
Il est pour cela que j'ai dit à l'ouverture de cette séminaire que l'anticommunisme n'est pas suffisant.
The anti, as I said, will not bring the positive result or the victory. It is a defensive.
L'anti ne peut pas apporter un résultat positif. Et le communisme, l'anti non plus ne peut pas apporter la victoire parce qu'il n'est pas positif, on peut dire.
So what we need is a positive solution.
Ce qu'il nous faut, c'est une solution positive, on peut dire.
This is coming from the ground floor. The ground floor level is ideological offensive. Ideological level.
Cela peut se réaliser uniquement à travers une nouvelle perspective, à travers une offensive, à travers une nouvelle perspective.
So then the bottom line of their evil is, as I said, is godlessness, God denying. Therefore, this ideological offensive must be centered upon God-centered worldview. It's the most logical.
Donc, comme j'ai déjà noté, la base fondamentale du communisme, c'est qu'il nie l'existence de Dieu. C'est la base fondamentale. Donc, dans cette nouvelle perspective, ce qui est essentiel à la base de toutes les choses est l'affirmation de l'existence de Dieu.
Therefore, Causa's worldview is centered upon God-centered. We call it Godism.
C'est pour cela que la perspective de Causa est centrée sur Dieu. Nous l'appelons le dieuisme.
The Causa is inviting all men and women to come to very basic God. Period.
Causa invite à tous les hommes et à toutes les femmes, de venir à l'élément le plus fondamental, les croyances en Dieu.
This will bring the solution to communism.
À travers une foi réelle, il sera possible de réaliser une solution au problème du communisme.
They're trying to build that dream, a dreaming society, an ideal society without God for 66 years.
Depuis 60 ans, ils essaient de réaliser ce rêve sans Dieu.
And they failed.
Et ils ont échoué.
Now time has come. We ask them to get up the stage.
On est arrivé au point où il faut leur dire qu'ils doivent quitter la scène.
Karl Marx had 100 years since his death.
On a donné Karl Marx 100 ans depuis sa mort.
And biblically, 66 years is very meaningful.
Selon la Bible, le chiffre 66 a un sens très profond.
Time has come. The communism must get off the stage.
Le moment est arrivé, le communisme doit sortir de la scène.
Another human conscience must come on the stage, but this time with God.
Une autre conscience humaine doit venir, mais cette fois avec Dieu.
The Causa is trying to point what that dream would be and how we can achieve it.
Causa veut indiquer, veut suggérer qu'est-ce que cela représente ces rêves et comment on peut l'atteindre.
That therefore, we say our ultimate goal to create the foundation for lasting peace.
Pour cela, nous disons que notre but final est de réaliser le fondement pour la paix éternelle de Dieu.
And as I said, this is the oldest question and the newest question.
Dieu, c'est la question, disons, le sujet le plus nouveau, le plus récent et aussi le sujet le plus ancien de discussion.
Basically, we are trying to deal with this subject, more correct term would be the ontology or ontological problem with God. In other words, we want to deal with the question of existence of God. It's a very interesting question.
Cet après-midi, nous voulons parler de, on peut dire, l'ontologie, ou peut-être mieux la réalité de Dieu, ou bien l'essence de Dieu.
We Causa believe, starting from the individual, the problem, to the global problem, the all is based on the clarity or unclarity about this question, whether truly God exists. This is the base, ground floor of all the problems of the world.
Pour Causa, nous croyons que tous les problèmes qui existent dans ce monde, peu importe si on parle à un niveau individuel ou à un niveau mondial, nous croyons que les bases de tous ces problèmes se trouvent dans cette question, l'existence ou la non-existence de Dieu.
How to know God? This is the question. How do we know God?
Mais la question est comment est-ce qu'on peut arriver à connaître Dieu? Comment nous, on peut connaître Dieu?
If we are trying to solve this question philosophically, maybe the volumes of volumes that have filled this entire auditorium, still we have not explained. I'm sure we have not explained him all.
Si on essaie de résoudre cette question à travers la philosophie, on pourrait facilement remplir ces livres avec des tomes de livres, avec des tomes à propos de l'existence de Dieu, et même avec cela, on n'arriverait pas vraiment à une réponse.
I am not either a scientist or even a scholar.
Moi-même, je ne suis pas un chercheur et je ne peux pas dire que je suis académique non plus, académicien non plus.
We're not trying to take the academic or scientific, per se, scientific, approach to laboratory approach to trying to find God.
Nous ne voulons pas ici prendre une méthodologie de laboratoire pour trouver Dieu.
The Causa approach is common sense approach.
Disons que la direction que prend Causa, c'est plutôt une direction du sens pratique, du sens commun, quoi.
Because God is God of everybody. Children, women, men, street people, scholars, philosophers, including shopkeepers, janitors, everybody's God.
Parce que Dieu est le Dieu de tout le monde. Le Dieu des philosophes, le Dieu de l'homme dans la rue, le Dieu des vendeurs. Enfin, il est le Dieu de tout le monde.
The children doesn't have to really to be a scholar to understand their parents.
Les enfants ne sont pas obligés d'être des grands intellectuels pour comprendre leurs parents.
It's a tragedy. Today we have to discuss about God in this fashion. This in itself is a tragedy.
En fait, c'est une tragédie qu'il faut parler de Dieu dans cette façon, dans cette manière, comme nous faisons.
This effort needs to be, necessary because, as I said, we men separate from God, blinded ourselves.
Cette recherche de Dieu est nécessaire à cause de cette séparation qui est arrivée entre Dieu et l'homme.
So let us, therefore, in the next 50 minutes, a common sense approach. Make a common sense with this problem. Is there really God?
Colonel Pop, my name is Cliff Kincaid. I'm with a newspaper called Human Events in Washington, D.C. I'm a conservative. I'm also a Christian. You say you want to put everything out on the table. Let me ask you a direct question. There have been numerous references during the seminars, including during the speeches tonight, about Christianity and Jesus. Do you believe that Jesus Christ was the only Son of God, that he rose from the dead, and that he will come again?
We do not see Jesus as God himself.
Mais dans notre théologie, on ne voit pas Jésus comme Dieu,
The total image of God.
mais comme l'image totale de Dieu.
God is always invisible, infinite out there. And he is made into visible human form, walking God.
on the face of the earth.
Dieu est toujours invisible, infini, et il s'est exprimé à niveau visible à travers un homme.
He's a perfected man.
Un homme parfait.
Therefore, he lived on the human level as well as God-like level. Deity. He exercised the deity, God-like quality.
Jésus avait une qualité divine. Il était un homme, mais en même temps, il vivait à un niveau divin, on peut dire.
But another important thing Unification Church believes, that is, that God not only intended Jesus alone to be perfect, Jesus came to breed all mankind, bringing them into the same level of perfection.
Mais dans l'Église de l'unification, on ne croit pas seulement que Jésus était parfait, mais on croit que Jésus est venu sur cette terre pour montrer à tous les hommes comment arriver à cette même sorte de perfection, cette même sorte de relation avec Dieu.
Remember, in the Bible, Jesus preached always men on his same level, himself. When he talks about perfection, Matthew chapter 5:48, he said, I therefore, you therefore, you, everybody, you therefore must be perfect as Heavenly Father is perfect. Incredible statement, isn't it? There was homework, assignment given to us. You shall be perfect as Heavenly Father is perfect, as He is perfect. That's what He's saying. As I am perfect, you must become perfect too.
I'm glad that you had the courage and the determination to undertake this journey under the sponsorship of a wonderful organization, respectable, important organization, Causa, which I support. Because these are all constructive efforts for peace in a world which is in great danger.
C'est une surprise que de me voir appelé ici. Je n'aurai pas le talent de mon prédécesseur, je ne trouverai pas des accents shakespeariens pour vous parler de la réforme.
It's a surprise for me to be called here, and I'm afraid I won't have the talent of the previous speaker. I won't speak with a Shakespearean accent about the reform. I'd speak better about Don Quixote. But what I have to say is extremely simple, and believe me, was not prepared. What I want to say is that I have held a particularly interesting seminar. It seems to me it gives the intellectual, doctrinal and spiritual basics of a big movement against communism. Our struggle is an ideological struggle. Here is truly something which struck. Democracy is not an ideology, but communism is an ideology. Christianity is an ideology. I'm not a member of Unification Church nor of Causa, but now that I understand the principles and purpose of Causa, I would like to ask Mr. Park and Mr. Ward if I can join the Causa movement.
It's a pity I cannot speak in my own language, but I'm still paying the price of having been in a colony. I'm very grateful indeed, and I think I was sent here by Almighty God. I've taken great pleasure in attending this seminar, in knowing some of you, and in being refreshed in the belief that there are still some people in this world who still care about the plight of others. and that is Causa.
My husband and I support your work because we believe that there must be a basic philosophy, a strategy, and a will for the very survival of our way of life. These are my roses for you.
Après ce que vient de dire mon mari, je me suis encore plus bouleversée de prendre la parole derrière lui.
My husband explained that we are linked in so many ways and that we are in fact a spiritual family. I am very touched. I didn't come to speak about political topics because I only know the effects of politics, but very little about history. I only want to share with you my emotions during this seminar. It is the first time that I have come to a Causa seminar, and I have been very touched by the logic that was brought out in the presentation of Colonel Bohipak.
J'ai longtemps cherché à travers des fois différents un Dieu.
For a long time, I've been seeking for different beliefs, a God I had never met. Every time I found a religion, I saw illogical facts which I couldn't understand. But Mr. Park's way of speaking during this seminar is for me the language which corresponds with my inner engagement. I feel able to assume and follow this deep thought, which is not only an ideology, but also the progress and transformation of one's life, step by step, every day.
Mais pas seulement une idéologie, mais qui est aussi la marche en avant, la transformation d'une vie pas à pas et chaque jour.
In fact, the right word for me to use is revolution. Not Marxist, materialistic revolution, but an inner revolution. And this is how I understand it. I would like to make it the base of my life. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. From the bottom of my heart. Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Murat, ladies and gentlemen, I'm absolutely honored and happy to conclude this seminar in this most bright and hopeful note. And you have given me no better gift than the kind word spoken on behalf of Causa. And the Causa is to stay in Paris, in France, in Europe, and I will work in all over the world as your friend of those who love freedom, love democracy, above all, those who are willing to rally around, as Mr. Ambassador so beautifully stated, on the one supreme being, God. The word I have spoken at the opening address, I want to repeat that word. Now, I didn't say who said it at the opening address, but I'll say now who. I'm sure you have that word with you. This is the word of famous scholar and statesman and the great intellectual leadership of France. I'm talking about Dr. Jacques Fustel, who came to Cartagena and who came back and wrote this article published in the very famed publication in Paris. Again, I read. Those who participated in the 5 days left for their country with the comfort of knowing that they are not alone, that other souls, a few everywhere,
share the same ideal of liberty in this tragic world, so fraught with danger, on which dark clouds throw their menacing shadow. A light shines from Cartagena, and it is a ray of hope. The reason I'm reading this, I hope that Causa Seminar conclude in Paris as a ray of hope. Hope, that's what we need. There's so many people in despair today, hopelessness. We must restore hope. As long as we have hope, we can go on. And particularly the great city of Paris, known as City of Light, City of Truth. So this is truly the most appropriate place, the new ray of hope coming out of this place, particularly out of this seminar, shining all over France, all over Europe, eventually all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Causa is saying to you that what is Causa? Causa is you. You are the Causa. You, it's your Causa, your project, your divine mission. Let us be victorious together. God bless you. Thank you very much.
The subcommittee has requested Colonel Pak Bo-hee, head of the Korean Cultural Freedom Foundation and its project Radio Free Asia, to appear today to answer questions regarding allegations that he had official ties with the government of the Republic of Korea in connection with Korean attempts to influence U.S. policy and opinion. Colonel Pak declined to appear voluntarily as a witness in 1976, and again this year he's appearing under subpoena today. Colonel Pak, would you raise your right hand, please? You do solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give to this subcommittee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
Washington, D.C., capital of the United States. Yet in reality, it is also the capital of the free world today. Its lofty Capitol building rises impressively above the skyline. The statues of Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln stand as prominent landmarks. Washington is the universal symbol of democracy. This is the White House. From this house, the President of the United States carries out his duties and implements policies which shape not only the destiny of America, but that of the world. In 1972, Washington was shaken by a shocking political scandal called Watergate, which ended only after forcing President Richard M. Nixon out of the White House. As the Watergate era came to a close, the media looked eagerly for another such exciting event. Enter Tongson Park, a Korean businessman accused of bribing the United States Congress. Unavoidably, this investigation focused on South Korea. Among the congressional committees investigating Koreagate was one headed by Congressman Donald M. Fraser, chairman of the House Subcommittee on International Organizations. He chose Reverend Sun Myung Moon and the Unification Church as targets upon which to make his mark. One may ask, why Reverend Moon? The answers are obvious. First, Reverend Moon is the most well-known Korean in the United States. And second, his religious views and anti-communist stand have generated controversy in many quarters. Therefore, he appeared to Mr. Fraser to be an ideal and easy target. Reverend Moon felt called by God to come to America. His purpose was to begin a new spiritual movement in America. During the next 5 years, his movement became a whirlwind. The initial welcome Reverend Moon received was heartwarming. In more than 800 American cities and towns, he was given honorary keys, citizenship, and letters of appreciation. In September 1974, at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, Reverend Moon held a Day of Hope banquet. Distinguished guests from many fields gathered to mark the inauguration of yet another spiritual crusade. Here, Reverend Moon was introduced to the guests, and he received a most enthusiastic welcome. Mrs. Moon was also welcomed. On September 18, 1974, a rally was held in Madison Square Garden. It was an unprecedented success. Over 60,000 people came to hear Reverend Moon, but only 35,000 could fit into the hall. Reverend Moon proclaims the realistic building of the actual kingdom of God on earth. Many of America's youth who are seeking spiritual truth, direction for their lives, and hope for the future follow him. Reverend Moon's crusade soon spread to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Chicago, Atlanta, Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And in every city, he raised the beacon of spiritual revolution. Finally, his crusade and this spiritual fire reached all 50 states. This is New York's Yankee Stadium. Here in 1976, on the occasion of America's bicentennial, Reverend Moon held the God Bless America Festival to congratulate the nation on the 200th anniversary of its independence. He prayed for God to bless America as it entered its third century. He urged all Americans to uphold the founding spirit of America, the spirit of a God-centered America. Then, on September 18, 1976, he held the greatest religious rally in the history of Washington. Over 300,000 people gathered at the Washington Monument. It was here he proclaimed that America must continue its search for truth under the banner of one world under God. This spiritual movement, created by a man from Korea, has inevitably been taken as a threat by some established quarters. Moreover, the international communists and the leftists in America regard Reverend Moon's victory over communism philosophy as disturbing. As a result, from both left and right, Reverend Moon and the Unification Church have been harassed and persecuted. Some people wanted to block Reverend Moon and his movement. One such person who took advantage of this situation was Mr. Donald M. Fraser. Mr. Fraser follows a far leftist political line and is a well-known opponent of the Korean government. For him, Koreagate was a golden opportunity. He sought to link the Unification Church with the Korean CIA in order both to defame Reverend Moon and destroy the Unification Church in America. Also, he sought to embarrass the Korean government. In the process, he tried to create political capital for himself to use later in his campaign for the Senate. The morning of March 22, 1978, Chairman Fraser proudly interrogated the former Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger. That afternoon, he called Mr. Bo Hee Pak, Special Assistant to Reverend Moon. In 3 open sessions and 2 closed, 5 sessions in all, Mr. Pak confronted the committee without fear. He gave his testimony not as one accused, but rather as the accuser. He defended his faith, the honor of Reverend Moon, and the reputation of his church. He defended his country, Korea, with passion, and fearlessly attacked Congressman Fraser's anti-Korea policy.
I would like to make it clear that I have been resisting this investigation adamantly. Why? Not because I have something to hide, not because I'm afraid of any exposure, but because of the way this investigation was motivated and conducted, because of the lack of objectivity and a sensitivity to what kind of impact this investigation is making upon many innocent people, not only in this country, but around the world. Today, I'm indeed a citizen of the Republic of Korea, and I'm an immigrant to this great nation of immigrants. 4 of my 6 children were born in this country, and they are American citizens. Certainly, I have a loyalty to my heritage of Korea, but I owe my life to America. My loyalty to America is just as strong as that to my own country. Here I am today, in the United States Congress, summoned by this august subcommittee on international organizations headed by you, Mr. Chairman. I stand here not as a proud witness, but more as the accused as an agent or spy of a foreign country, accused as a KCI agent, accused as a running dog of the foreign government. Nothing could be further from the truth. I know I have been none of those things. Then why am I here today? Why am I singled out? I do know one thing. I'm here today because I'm a Korean, disciple of Reverend Moon, and a member of Unification Church, and a dedicated anti-communist. Korean, this word is a dirty word in these days, and everything Korean is suspect. Also, to be a Moonie in this country is very unpopular, and the cause for anti-communism is practically dead now. Yet I'm all of those unpopular things. I may look like a fool. Mr. Chairman, I will not recant, however, any of those qualifications. I'm a proud Korean, a proud Moonie, and a dedicated anti-communist, and I intend to remain so the rest of my life. Yet this is not all. I'm particularly anguished over the fact that the noble work of the man who came to this country to preach the gospel has been so misunderstood and mistreated. Reverend Moon preached in every state and the most major cities of America numerous times in the last several years. I believe his work is unparalleled by any religious leader in this country. His vision ignited so many disillusioned American youth, and he became a symbol of hope to them. But now the divine work has suffered under this unfounded, vicious attack. The damage is all the more serious because since it is happening in America, its impact is not confined to America alone. American news travel everywhere. Reverend Moon's disciples and the missionaries in 127 countries are being falsely accused due to these false allegations. We are scared of the communist takeover. We fear this happening so much that we would give our very lives to stop it. We saw our small country practically overrun by communists in 1950. I fought that war. We have had millions killed and are taken to the north. We cannot afford to have the same situation happen again. Too much blood, too much tragedy. Our hearts bleed as we remember such things. With any amount of sacrifice necessary, we cannot allow another invasion from the north. With the above situation, the Korean government must have been concerned and irritated by the planned withdrawal of the United States troops announced in 1970. Of course, the Korean people were disheartened by the prospect of the U.S. withdrawal. Government, as well as the people, know that the U.S. presence is essential and vital for national security. Both the government and the people have become very desperate, and they want to do something about it. This is a natural instinct for survival. In a few more years, North Korea would not even dare to plan an outright attack on South Korea because the power difference between North Korea and South Korea would be so staggering. Was not the U.S. looking forward to the day when Korea would become totally self-sufficient and the danger of war would be totally eliminated? Korea has made great achievements toward that goal. The last thing I want to see is that Korea to become another Vietnam. Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, I would like to make one final plea. Anything I have said today, however slight, that disturbed you, please forgive me. I said I have nothing against you personally. Let us think for a moment about destiny of two countries, USA and Korea. It has been a special destiny. America liberated this one small peninsula from the hand of foreign imperial powers in 1945, and it gave birth to a new nation in 1948. In 1950, the U.S., in the person of Harry Truman, committed to the defense of Korea from North Korean communist aggression. In 3 years, America lost more than 30,000 gallant men. Many more tens of thousands were wounded. Indeed, this indicates a special destiny. It is truly beyond human comprehension, and no man could have mapped out this course. It is God-inspired and preordained destiny, I believe. On the other hand, there are international forces dedicated to see to it that Korea would become another Vietnam. There are people and nations who are dying to see free Korea destroyed. These people are not just sitting around waiting, doing nothing. They're doing everything possible to guarantee this would happen. If they should ever succeed, Korea would become another Vietnam. This would be a tragic day for the United States and for the world. Yes, Korea cannot survive without the United States, because Korea's enemy is not just Kim Il-sung, but Russia and Red China as well. But ultimately, the United States would not survive without Korea either. Why? For two reasons. Korea is in a geographically strategic position and essential to the future freedom of the world. If Korea turns into a second Vietnam, there would be a third Vietnam. That may very well be Japan. Then who would be the fourth Vietnam? This investigation has a quality to be used and exploited by our potential enemy, and it might permanently cripple the relationship of the two countries, thus pushing Korea one step closer to another Vietnam. And you are holding the two-edged sword in the palm of your hand, sir. Future history will record just how you used the two-edged sword. Mr. Chairman, there is an old Korean saying that goes, in trying to pull up the horn, you may kill the cow. And there is an American saying, you may win the battle, but lose the war. For God's sake, please uphold the God-inspired destiny of our two nations. I plead with you, sir, that you must win the battle and the war. Do not kill the cow while pulling at the horn.
How long a time are you speaking of, Colonel? How much time?
I know time is essence, and a prepared page is 23 pages. However, I made my conscientious effort to shorten as short as possible, bare minimum down to 15 pages. I even bought the stopwatches to measure the time, and it took me 19 minutes, 45 seconds. And it is imperative for me to have this 19 minutes, and I'd like to ask Mr. Chairman that he give this opportunity to register my side of the feeling and my side of the story as I see it, because just answering, Mr. Chairman, your question, that does not bring out the truth that as we see it.
Well, Colonel, I'm sorry if your answers to the questions don't produce the truth, but that's all we're trying to get at. We'll give you 5 minutes and no more. If you can make whatever points you want in 5 minutes, we'll be delighted to hear you. But 5 minutes, it seems to me, is entirely adequate in view of the enormous amount of time you've had already.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to really plead you once again that I'd like to have this 19 minutes.
Colonel, we're quite prepared to have your entire statement put in the record. You can just make your principal points in 5 minutes.
Yes, I do know it can be put into a record, but however, you know, that the reason I want to read this because I'm not only just speaking the words, but my soul and heart and anguish and so forth, and these things cannot be entered into the record. I'd like to...
Colonel, if we don't have an agreement on the 5 minutes, I think we'll simply proceed with the questions. You can have your choice. If you want to take 5 minutes, that'll be fine. Otherwise, we'll just go directly to the questions.
I will ask for 15 minutes, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what, Colonel, we'll split the difference. How's 10 minutes?
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't make it too much difference. I will stay an hour longer, or even up to midnight. Could you kindly give me 5 more minutes? I said 15 minutes, even though it takes me 19 minutes, 45 seconds.
All right, Colonel, start your stopwatch and we'll go for 15 minutes.
Then what the Reverend Moon stand for? Number one, he stands for God and God-centered ideology. Also, Reverend Moon absolutely opposes communism, which is the enemy of God and men. Number 2, he stands for a strong anti-communist Korea and a strong God-centered America. Reverend Moon believes that Korea and America should stand united in a common cause against the forces of communist tyranny. These, then, are two of the most important things which Reverend Moon stands for. You, Mr. Chairman, are absolutely determined to destroy him and everything he stands for. Could that mean that you stand for the opposite? Does it mean that, Mr. Chairman, that you favor the communist cause? Does it mean that you seek to destroy Korea, perhaps create a second Vietnam there, disrupt the Korean-American relation? According to reliable press accounts, shortly after the fall of Vietnam, you circulated a Dear Colleague memo to your fellow congressmen, which expressed your satisfaction that your involvement in Vietnam, our involvement in Vietnam, had finally drawn to an end. You suggested further that the time had come to review our involvement in Korea as well. Is this the beginning of your campaign to get Korea? How else we can explain the things you have done? History of the subcommittee activities under your leadership, coupled with your own personal commitment, demonstrate that you have consistently supported pro-communist causes and groups and sought to undermine anti-communist governments and individuals, often using human rights as a smokescreen. This subcommittee, Mr. Chairman, has spent so far 34 months and over $500,000 investigating alleged wrongdoing of the Korean government. Yet you devoted only 1.5 days investigating the genocide in Cambodia, one of the most terrible human rights crimes in history. An article on September 23, 1976 in the Congressional Record report, and another Socialist Workers' Party front, which you, Mr. Chairman, lent your name in support of, the Political Rights Defense Fund, set up to coordinate Socialist Workers' Party lawsuits against the FBI. The report mentioned one lawsuit which you support, charging the FBI with illegal surveillance of the Socialist Workers' Party. It seems strange to me that you condemn the FBI for surveillance for a known communist and potentially violent organization and say nothing about the U.S. government's illegal surveillance of the Korean Blue House, which is a clear violation of Korean law and the human rights of the Korean people. The most serious allegation against you, Mr. Chairman, was made by a former Polish communist intelligence operator, journalist Kochanski, who defected to the United States. Walter Riley reports in a 1977 Dateline Washington that Mr. Kochanski, the defected head of several Polish intelligence networks and a director of the Department Pole living abroad, testified under oath that Representative Donald Fraser worked as an agent of influence on Capitol Hill for the Soviet Union. Suppose the Korean government had taken extraordinary steps involving hundreds of agents to win influence in the United States Congress, then we must ask, why would they do it? What would be Korea's purpose and ultimate goal? To subvert America? To destroy or defeat America? Absolutely not. Korea is motivated by the most simple human instinct, survival. That is the bottom line. Korea wants to survive, not at the expense of America, but together with America. You know that, Mr. Chairman, yet you continue to seek to destroy that relationship. Why? On the other hand, what is Moscow's motivation? What does the Soviet Union stand for? And what is it seeking? Nothing less than the total destruction of America and the defeat of the free world. Recent issue of Time magazine, February 6, 1978, reported on the phenomenal growth and outreach of the KGB. In this issue of Time, it said that KGB spent over $10 billion a year with 500,000 employees and has 5 times the number of foreign agents as the U.S. and Western Europe combined. But you have never spent 1 red cent investigating the activities of the KGB in America. This subcommittee would seem ideally structured to undertake the task. Instead, you have spent 34 months and $685,000 investigating probably innocuous attempts of an American ally to shore up its relationship with your country. Today, in this subcommittee hearing room, we have raised portentous questions which demand answers. What if, as the evidence suggests, you, Mr. Chairman, are secretly working to undermine Korean-American relations? What if you are an ardent supporter of the Trotskyist Communist Socialist Workers' Party? What if you are an agent of influence for Moscow here on Hill. If these things are true, then the government of the United States is itself in grave danger. America's very survival and the security of the free world are at stake. Reverend Moon has come to this country not for his own sake, but to awaken America to the threats of communism, and through America to awaken the whole world. In opposition to the God-denying ideology of communism, Reverend Moon is proclaiming a God-centered ideology. Its only goal is to inspire others to work together to build God-centered families, nations, and a God-centered world.
In a difficult battle, Mr. Pak is as tough as the situation requires. But at home, another side emerges. He is a family man and a good father. He has a wife, Ki Suk Pak, and 6 children. Reverend Moon teaches that the family is the building block of the kingdom of heaven. Mr. Pak and his family attempt to live up to that ideal. In June 1950, when the Korean War broke out, Mr. Pak was a cadet at the Korean Military Academy. The very day the war broke out, he was sent to the front line to fight. 7 years later, in 1957, now a major in the Korean Army, Mr. Pak met Reverend Moon. In 1961, while a major in the Korean Army, Mr. Bohee Pak was selected for diplomatic duty as the assistant military attaché at the Korean Embassy in Washington, D.C. In recognition of his outstanding service as a diplomat, he received a citation from the Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea. Hoping to spread understanding of the heart and culture of Korea, he brought the Little Angel, the children's folk ballet of Korea, to all corners of the globe.
We are very honored to present a special holiday program of the Little Angel. This program is presented for the benefit of the United Nations Children's Fund.
He was the only Korean to speak at the United Nations General Assembly Hall as a private citizen. He taught the Little Angel love of country. At The Hague, he led the children in the laying of flowers on the tomb of the Korean patriot Lee Jun, who gave his life in an attempt to save the independence of Korea. In 1971, Mr. Pak and the Little Angels were invited for a royal command performance in the presence of Her Majesty the Queen of England in London. After the performance, they were guests at a special royal reception. But Mr. Pak's main mission is to spread God's word. He serves Reverend Moon as his special assistant and principal interpreter. In addition, when he is on his own, he also teaches Reverend Moon's new revelation throughout the United States, Japan, and many other nations of the world. Often working all through the night at his quiet Washington office, he prepared for the fight at the Fraser hearing. He prepared not just his words, but also his soul. The real source of Mr. Pak's power is his faith. Faith instilled in him by the teachings of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, whom he regards as a modern-day prophet and spiritual father. He believes in the power of prayer, and he often prays together with his family. As a man dedicated to God, his life has not been usual or mundane. God has given him many rare responsibilities which he never anticipated or asked for. It seems to be destiny, for once again God gave him the responsibility to represent his nation, his faith, and his church at the United States Congress when they were unjustly attacked by the Congressional Committee.
Mr. Chairman, when I read this article, my mind and body and concern was anchored. And I am Reverend Moon's disciple. Although I am an imperfect disciple, there's one thing that is absolutely sure. I do live by God's moral code and principle, taught by Reverend Moon, and I shall continue to do so the rest of my life. Yet, my honor has been destroyed. You did it. What right do you have to destroy me? Is that your human right? Then where is my human right? Since I do not believe in any eye for eye, all I can do is pray for you. You shall surely reap what you have sown. This is a lie. You are the author of this information. You gave this lie to the power of the United States Congress. This is the worst character assassination possible. You did this to the man who came to America to do the work of God and save his country from immorality. I cannot help but believe that you are being used as instrument of the devil. You, yes, instrument of the devil. I said it. Who else would want to destroy a man of God but the devil? Mr. Chairman, indeed this subcommittee has become a witch hunt, kangaroo court. You see an opportunity to make a killing for your political campaign. You needed a target. Reverend Moon and the Unification Church and a struggling South Korea have become the ideal target. Do you think you can become a senator at the cost of the blood, honor, and the lives of innocent people? You will find innocent blood very costly. I say to you what St. Thomas, who had been brought to trial on the charges of treason by Henry VIII, sticking to his own religious conviction, said to Sir Richard, who had perjured himself in testimony against St. Thomas in order to advance his own career, even at the cost of the saint's blood. Quoting Jesus, St. Thomas said, "For what will it profit a man if he gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?" For this he was beheaded. Mr. Chairman, I know it is easy and unpopular in the short run to prosecute new religious groups. So it was for Nero, so it was for Julian the Apostate. But does history remember them for their social reform, or foreign policy, or even human rights? No, it remembers them as a great persecutor in history. And so history might remember Donald Fraser, if it remembers him at all. You may get my scalp, Mr. Chairman, go ahead. But never my heart and soul. My heart and soul belong to God. The Lord is my shepherd. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I'm ready. Thank you.
I am a proud Korean and a proud Moonie. I cannot let my country, my spiritual father, my faith, and my church be shamed. I am willing to fight with my life, Mr. Pak said over and over. Reverend Moon's prayer was always with him. And finally, justice was done. On September 13th, 1978, Congressman Donald Fraser, who was a chairman of a powerful subcommittee, had abused his power, lost his primary election in a senatorial race. With this defeat, he lost his congressional seat altogether. Mr. Fraser's defeat, however, was not an ordinary one. Political analysts were unanimous in predicting a Fraser landslide. On election eve, his victory seemed certain. At midnight, the press declared Fraser victor. There was great celebration, and he went to bed happy. The next day, the early morning papers even declared in big headlines, Fraser beats out Short. But during the night, a miracle had been quietly in the making. When Fraser woke up the next morning, he found that he had lost by a small margin. It was an unbelievable upset defeat. Mr. Fraser's attempt to use Reverend Moon and the Unification Church for political gain backfired. In the end, truth prevailed. Shortly after Mr. Fraser's election defeat, the subcommittee issued its final report. The Unification Church was proven innocent, and Reverend Moon's honor was restored. In Seoul, Reverend Moon broke his long silence and asked his church to forgive Mr. Fraser and pray for his soul. But he also added, Mr. Fraser's defeat was more than political fortune. It was an act of God.
Havana, 1967. Che Guevara, hero of the Cuban Revolution, proclaims, "We need 2, 3, many Vietnams." San Salvador, 1981. 12,000 people killed. Why? A struggle for the control of a country. On the one side, Cuban-backed guerrillas. On the other, death squads controlled by dispossessed landowners. Caught in the middle, the people and their government. In 1972, a Democratic president was elected on a land reform platform. That same day, he was overthrown by the military, tortured, and sent into exile. On October 15, 1979, the military junta was overthrown, and José Napoleón Duarte returned as president, supported by liberal military officers, the peasant union, and the middle class.
People said that the government will not last 1 week, and we have 1 year now, and we'll continue. Also is needed the economical aid. The country has been destroyed. Our economical has been a part of their effort to destroy all the economy in order to make the weaken the economical structure and to frustrate the labor people. So this is part of the world strategy of the extreme left. We need help there.
With $109 million in U.S. economic aid and the advice of the AFL-CIO, Duarte has carried out a land reform program that transformed the country. Coffee and sugarcane estates have been turned into peasant cooperatives. Tenant farmers now own land on which they formerly paid exorbitant rents to absentee landlords. Out of 300,000 formerly landless peasant families, 212,000 now have land. But the land reform has enemies. Armed with rifles, the campesinos must protect their land from former owners who want their land back, and Marxist guerrillas who find that since the reforms, few peasants want to join the revolution.
The agrarian reform is a technical process in order to make the campesinos have the opportunity to use the best way possible for the land. They know this, and they know that we cannot hesitate. We have to do it fast, but not dumb.
The land reform in El Salvador is the largest in Central America. Marxist guerrillas have declared the disruption of the land reform to be one of their major goals. Campesinos who refuse to cooperate with the guerrillas are often executed.
It all became uncontrollable. You know, they started not just to, the main targets were not the prominent people, but everybody could be a target. I'm a student of the University of Miami now. I'm a former student of the University of El Salvador. I was in the architecture school. Now I have transferred because of the situation in my country, and they closed the university. I feel very bad because a country like that cannot survive too long with the economy stopped that way. But I think that the people has realized that the guerrillas are not the answer. It's not what they said at the beginning. It didn't turn out to be what they were propagandizing. The real killing is the killing of a country in which everybody really loses and dies at the end.
The guerrillas burn factories and destroy crops. In one town, they even destroyed the water tower. In January, the guerrillas called for a popular uprising, a final offensive. But it was a failure. The people did not respond. So the guerrillas have gone back to their earlier tactics: terrorism and random bombing. "6,000 Salvadorians were killed by the guerrillas in 1980, according to their own communiques.
Quisiera estar contigo.
Ya que salga la...
Catholic Archbishop Rivera said the guerrillas have made violence and loyalty to Marxism their battle cry. They have lost the support of the people, he said, because the people saw that they tended toward the conquest of power for its own sake.
There
have been 3 attacks, and I've been right here all the time. I keep on working. Let them do what they want. Up there, I know that God is the one who has to protect me, as long as he wants me to be in this earth.
An American journalist who covered Central and Latin American politics for over 20 years, Jeffrey St. John, has lectured at universities across the country.
I've covered revolutions, including the revolution in Cuba and various other revolutions. And I began to realize when I was in Havana for the Boston Herald Traveler that I was seeing a replay of a historical tragedy that I had read about. That is, that revolutions promise much but deliver very little. And it was there, I think, that I began to really have an intensive interest in seeing what Castro had promised and what he did not deliver. Castro promised what Lenin had promised, in essence: peace, land, and bread. And what he delivered, what Lenin delivered, was exactly the opposite. He delivered a dictatorship of the people. Castro, of course, emulated the same totalitarian model.
Allá in Cuba, when I was 17 years old, I go to the mountain to fight with Fidel Castro and with Che Guevara to stop the injustice in my country.
In the mountains of Cuba, Olga Rodriguez met and married the American revolutionary William Morgan. They fought side by side with Fidel Castro for liberty and justice in Cuba.
I first met Bill Morgan at the Havana Hilton Hotel over a Blanc Dubonnet in 1959, and he was an incredibly charismatic, romantic revolutionary who had plunged into a situation as was going on in Havana and was totally imbued with the idea of revolution and the romantic notion behind revolution.
Nos casamos y nos pusimos nuestros uniformes.
We got married. We were married in our uniforms. Those were very happy times because we felt we were accomplishing, doing something good for my country. And later, when our revolution was victorious, it was a victory for what we believed in. But then, in January 1959, we began to see. I realized that what we had been fighting for justice, for the things I believed were good for my country, I realized I was in error. For example, they looted the houses. There were beatings of the people who belonged to the previous government of the dictator Batista. And also massive murders, massive executions.
On March 11, 1961, my husband was killed in Cuba. They condemned me 30 years in prison.
She heard how her husband died from a priest who was a witness. Fidel Castro was a close friend of William Morgan, but when Morgan turned against communism, Fidel personally signed his order of execution. Castro had ordered him shot below the waist, and he watched as William Morgan died in agony.
En la prisión comunista hay mucho maltrato.
In the communist prison, there is a lot of mistreatment, as much for women as for men. The women were beaten by the men themselves and the women. The repression of the Cuban government are that you are beaten. They take away your food, the water, the most necessary things like water. You can go for days with only a glass of water that they give you at night. Since they are without conscience or anything, one would call and call for a doctor after they had beaten us. Fractures of the arm, blows in the face, the splitting of several ribs in the eyes. For example, I have a sick eye from a beating from there. I spent 12 years in prison. I was freed. I felt a great emotion to see my daughters. I've now been in the United States for 6 months. I feel very happy to be in a free country. And the only thing I ask these American people is that you understand that freedom is such a precious gift of humanity that there is nothing it can be compared to. So don't lose the opportunity that the world needs so much from you. It's the only hope that all the countries of the world have. That we have, who are in this country as refugees, we have the hope that you will keep your eyes open and always have present in your minds that the liberty is something so... It can't be explained with words.
April 1975, the last hours before the fall of Saigon, on the roof of the American Embassy.
During the war years, I opposed the American intervention in Vietnam, and I cooperated with the Viet Cong.
Duan Van Thuy was the vice president of the Saigon Student Union. In 1971, at the height of the anti-war protests in the United States, Duan was invited to speak at the Berkeley campus.
We drop it on the Viet Cong. Everybody, it's 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next up is Vietnam. And it's 5, 6.
A crowd of 10,000 turned out to hear him. When the communists won, he was given a high post in the new government. But in 1978, he joined the boat people and escaped from Vietnam. His sense of responsibility led him to contact the former leaders of the anti-war movement to tell them what it is like in Vietnam today. Joan Baez was greatly moved by Duan's story, and she publicly denounced the cruelty and inhumanity of the communist government in Vietnam.
When the communists took over, I was invited by the communists to work for them in the finance committee of the new regime. But the communists asked me to draw up a plan how to confiscate all the property of the people. A few days later, I was arrested by the communists. They don't agree with my proposal. I was in something like the tiger cage. They changed my right hand with my left leg and my left hand with my right leg. Every day they released me 2 times for lunch and dinner. And you know, for lunch, all the prisoners have to eat rice mixed with sand. And I learned from the other prisoners that to pour water into the pan of rice in order the sand sink down and eat the rice. But I must keep the water because each day I received only 1 liter of the water to drink, to bath, to wash everything for only 1 liter. The communists betrayed everything they promised with the Vietnamese people.
Hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese were sent to re-education death camps. Three million Cambodians were killed, starved, beaten, shot. This was the punishment by the Khmer Rouge for stealing a few extra rations of rice. Duan's article, A Lament for Vietnam, appeared in the New York Times in March 1981. He wrote, "We were under Chinese domination for 1,000 years. We were under the French for 100 years. For 30 years, we were at war. During those times, the Vietnamese people did not willingly leave their homeland, the land of their ancestors' graves. But now, they flee in millions by sea, even though they know they might drown, be raped by pirates, or waste away in refugee camps. They flee."
But when I got to Nicaragua in 1977, I realized that this was like a bad dream. I had been through this before. The same words, the same slogans, the same almost propaganda line was being enunciated.
20 years ago, the man in the center fought against Anastasio Somoza, whose family had ruled Nicaragua for over 40 years. As a leading businessman, Jose Cardenal joined with labor leaders in the strike that brought Somoza down and the Sandinistas to power.
I was involved in a movement against Somoza. I went to Cuba from Washington. I was studying in Washington. I was in Cuba for 3 months when Castro took power. And in that time, I found out that the help they want to give us is to put in my country a communist government. So we, the Nicaraguans who were there, decided to go to Costa Rica. And from there, who was a democratic government, they did help us to try to overthrow Somoza. It was not possible. We were put in jail for 7 months. That was a long time ago. Since then, I always been fighting against Somoza in a different way. I am not stealing any longer. In El Salvador, the guerrilla are fighting to change, to establish a communist government. In Nicaragua, we fought to get rid of the dictatorship, to get democracy, not to get another dictatorship, which is worse than the one we had before.
Don Mariano Mendoza was the leader of the labor movement in Nicaragua. He orchestrated the strike that brought the Nicaraguan economy to a halt and forced Somoza out of power.
Nos encontramos con paredes, a veces con tremendos muros.
In this struggle for a better life, we come up against obstacles, sometimes against tremendous walls, and the walls that I found that obligated me to think about democracy was the inequality of rights among us Nicaraguans. On the one hand, a class that kept getting richer under the protective hands of the dictatorship.
Y por el otro lado, el pobre empobreciéndose cada día más.
And the other side, the poor getting poorer every day. Of course, we're able to create laws to protect the worker through a constant struggle, a constant making of demands and strikes. But all that has changed now.
En este momento los trabajadores no tienen derecho a la huelga en Nicaragua.
At this time, workers in Nicaragua don't have the right to strike. It's one of the tactics of the communists to offer and offer and offer. You'll be the owners of the world. You'll be the owners of production, the owners of the houses, and many workers think, I'm going to live in that beautiful house over there. As soon as the revolution wins, I'm going to have an automobile that I have never had. I'm going to have a refrigerator which I have never had before. Comes the sad reality. The so-called revolution triumphs, and there has been no revolution. There has only been a change of individuals. There is a new class in power, and the dictatorship of the ultra-right, which we had, is transformed into a dictatorship of the ultra-left. Those who govern today in our country do not have ability. They have power. They have power. But it's one thing to have power and another thing to govern. And in Nicaragua, we haven't been governed for a long time because Somoza didn't govern either. Somoza had power. That's why he could destroy a country like he did. And now that we got the communists, they continue to destroy the country in an implacable way.
We believe that the national insurrection of the people of Nicaragua was betrayed. But we do consider that there has to be a solution from getting rid of the dictator to what? To get to another dictatorship? No. So actually, right now in Nicaragua, what we got now is an intervention of all the communist countries who are helping them. The problem we have in Nicaragua, they have it now in El Salvador.
Captured documents show that Cuba has been fully involved in the subversion of El Salvador. Cuba sponsored Salvadorian communist leader Shafiq Handel on a tour of the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and Vietnam. He was promised 800 tons of weapons, which are being shipped to El Salvador via Cuba and Nicaragua. A warning about the Soviet goal to establish another strategic base in our hemisphere was given by the new U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and former Georgetown University professor Jeane Kirkpatrick.
In the last 5 years, there has been an enormous military buildup of Soviet power in this hemisphere. Nobody likes to talk about the implications of the consolidation of power by a Marxist-Leninist regime in Nicaragua and the enormous, almost incredible military buildup that is underway in Nicaragua, quite apart from the weapons that they're sending to El Salvador, the number of weapons being simply stockpiled and military installations developed in Nicaragua is very substantial. The fact is that communism, Marxist-Leninist government, makes things worse, not better. That we need to be very clear about. Communism, as we know, when it arrives at political power, does not produce an economic order that can support a population. It does not produce a social system that provides equal opportunity or a good life to anyone. It does not work as a human system. And everybody in this room understands, I believe, that the number of refugees which pour out of communist countries decade after decade after decade proves the inhumanity of these systems and their incompatibility with human survival and human realization.
20 years ago, when Fidel Castro gave a child his first gun, He hoped that Cuban-style revolutions would flourish throughout Latin America. In 1981, in El Salvador, guerrillas armed by Cuba trained children for their revolution. In the January offensive, the guerrilla leaders sent children into battle ahead of the cadre. If the children were killed, the adult cadre would pull back rather than expose themselves to hostile fire, and the government would be accused of massacring children.
It's not only a Nicaraguan problem. It's a Central American problem. It's a continental problem. If they take Central America, they will take Venezuela, they will take Mexico. And once they take those countries, the Americans will have the communists just across the river. Yeah, we have to fight together. There is a big fight now in the world. Democracy and communism. You have to be in one or the other position. You cannot be in between. And if we believe in democracy, we have to fight for democracy. We have not the right to be afraid of fighting for democracy. That's very important.
Hasta este momento la democracia ha sido silenciosa.
Up to now, democracy has been silent. Democracy must not be silent, because through democracy we can make a great revolution in the world.
We're here today speaking on behalf of the people of El Salvador. So the big question here today, and I'm sure it's on your minds too, is what should the United States do about El Salvador?
Michael Smith is the East Coast director of a national student organization, the Collegiate Association for the Research of Principles.
We have to face reality in the world today. And the reality in the world today is that we're already locked into a struggle between what Alexander Solzhenitsyn called the worldwide force of evil and democracy. Democracy is not a new thing, so maybe it's not exciting because of its freshness or its newness. But we as students have to be willing to take our heads out of the sand and to face the reality as it is, even though it may be more painful than the just hoping that the reality we wish would be in the future is there right now. We recognize that many of the countries in the world are still striving to attain democracy. And we recognize that not all of those countries that America supports right now has perfect democracy. But we need to face reality as it is and work with the democratic elements within those countries and help them move their country gradually but effectively toward full democracy. The only alternative to that is some form of tyranny. As one journalist said, how terrible it is when you ignore reality, because then you're willing to tolerate anything.
A romantic is a person who has no appreciation of reality, of the world around him, and assumes certain things about the nature of people, institutions, and society that are just not so. He does it with the best of motives, but sometimes with the worst of consequences. In other words, he sees the world and what he sees he does not particularly like, and so he sets about to think that he can make changes, but the question always should be, change to what? Change to something better or to something worse? The realist looks at the world and accepts certain things that can be changed and tries to change them, but understands that essentially the matrix of progress has always been, ever since the time of the ancient Greeks, has been this, the mind. And when you abjure the mind, or you reject the mind in favor of power, you get into a situation which Lord Acton described in his Lessons of History, in which Acton said, history is not woven with innocent hands. Of all the things that degrade and demoralize men, power is the most constant and the most active. Political power does not solve problems. What does solve problems is human beings using their minds constructively in a free society. That is essentially why America became the kind of great civilization that she's become. Because a premium on the mind and not on muscle. Sure, there have been aspects of American history that we're not proud of. But in the overall view, American history is the standing monument to the idea that if men are left free to produce, to invent, and to conceive new ways of dealing with old problems, that is the highway to historical progress. And yet the evidence on the other side, when power has been the primary motivation, when violent revolution is postulated as the answer to a society's problem, the ends are always the same: death, destruction, and dictatorship.
¡Viva la felicidad! ¡La libertad que viva! ¡Que viva la libertad para nosotros los cubanos!
In April 1980, Castro opened the doors of his jail. 100,000 people escaped from Cuba. Don't let El Salvador become a prison for its people.
On behalf of the Cuban people, we want to express our gratitude to the North American government. And we also want to tell you, on behalf of the Cuban people, again, I'd say, that there are lots of people in Cuba who are still suffering because of the communist system. And we shall continue fighting for just one cause: liberty in all senses.
Sufrí tanto que me parecía que era imposible que pudiera llegar aquí. Vaya. Eso hay que... Uno quiere decirlo con palabras, pero se siente mucho acá adentro, pero... Quiero no expresarlo, pero es imposible, ¿no? Yo quiero que me entiendan todo, que... Vaya, para nosotros ha sido...
For us, it has been such a big experience. After having finished with all that, to know that we have people who can help us to understand our situation and to understand that this is a problem of communism that right here, if you don't protect your liberty here in this country, it could come to be a problem here, because it is happening in all of America, all of Latin America, and all because of my country.
The people of El Salvador want freedom and democracy. A popularly backed centrist government is struggling for its existence against Soviet and Cuban-supported subversion and terrorism. It has asked for our aid in order to continue much-needed reforms. We, as Americans, must help countries like El Salvador have a chance for democracy.
Die jüngste Entwicklung Argentiniens, der überzeugende Wahlsieg des Präsidenten Alfonsín, also die Rückkehr zur Demokratie, ungeheuer ansteckend gewirkt. Und es ist wohl nicht allzu schwer vorauszusagen, dass sich auch in Uruguay demnächst ein ähnlicher Wandel vollzieht. Die Uhr der Militärs läuft ab. Nun aber zu diesem Plakat. Es stammt von einer bisher unbekannten Organisation, Causa International, die in Montevideo, der Hauptstadt Uruguays, vor kurzem ihren ersten Kongress abhielt. Als Ziel gibt diese Organisation an, neue Ideen für eine Welt im Wandel zu liefern. Ihr Hauptsitz ist in New York, und wer steckt dahinter? Der höchst umstrittene koreanische Sektengründer Moon. Die Moon-Sekte nennt sich Vereinigungskirche. Sie ist in Wahrheit aber viel eher ein weltweit tätiges Wirtschaftsunternehmen, das seine beträchtlichen finanziellen Interessen mit pseudoreligiösen Motiven verbrämt. Causa International ist, wenn man so will, der weltliche Arm der Moon-Sekte, der in Lateinamerika tätig ist. Uruguay ist ihr Haupttätigkeitsfeld. In den letzten Jahren hat die Moon-Sekte gewaltige Summen nach Montevideo fließen lassen und erfreut sich dort ganz offensichtlich höchster Protektion. Welch anrüchige Bettgenossen, ein Militärregime, das spürt, wie seine Zeit zu Ende geht, und eine Sekte, die wie ein Aasgeier aus diesem Niedergang Profit zieht. Sehen Sie den Bericht von Klaus-Henning Affert.
Montevideo im Sog der argentinischen Entwicklung. Immer wieder schlägt der Straßenkarneval, den sie bis in die letzten Märztage hineintreiben, in politische Proteste. Mit der gewaltsamen Auflösung dieses Umzugs antworten Einsatzkommandos auf Forderungen nach Freiheit und Demokratie. Manchmal gleicht die Hauptstadt einem wahren Inferno. Die Militärs straffen die Zügel, weil sie eine ähnliche Abrechnung fürchten wie im benachbarten Buenos Aires. Nur gelegentlich machen sie Konzessionen. Doch das Volk hat genug von der 11-jährigen Herrschaft der Generäle, vom monatelangen Hin und Her um den endgültigen Wahltermin. Anstatt jetzt in die Kasernen zurückzukehren, suchen die Militärs nach Stützen des Regimes. Einer merkwürdigen Gesellschaft haben sie für einige Tage das Rathaus überlassen. Erzkonservative geben sich hier als wahre Demokraten. Sie versammeln sich zum ersten Panamerika-Kongress der antikommunistisch ausgerichteten Sekte des Koreaners Moon. Causa International nennt sich die bisher unbekannte politische Organisation des religiösen Eiferers, der in den USA lebt. Hier tritt er nicht in Erscheinung. Lediglich vom Foto an der Wand blickt Moon mit hintergründigem asiatischen Lächeln auf manchen noch ahnungslosen Teilnehmer herab. Was Oberst Pak, seine rechte Hand für militante Überraschungen aus New York mitgebracht hat, wird sich gleich zeigen. Alle Fäden hält Pak in der Hand. Vom Sandwich bis zum Bustransfer steuert er den Konferenzverlauf. Bis ins kleinste Detail gehen seine Weisungen an den beflissenen Julian Safi, zuletzt amtlicher Sprecher des uruguayischen Diktators Alvarez. Heute ist Safi Schlüsselfigur des Moon-Imperiums in Uruguay. Sanfte Einstimmung unter Sphärenklängen der Missionare. Bis zum großen Auftritt des Koreaners. Mit einschmeichelndem Lächeln beginnt der Oberst seine Kreuz-, Feld- und Schachzüge. Um die antimarxistische Ideologie zu erläutern, muss zunächst die Bibel herhalten. Schon die Israeliten habe Gott wegen ihrer Trägheit in Ägypten mit der langen Wüstenwanderung gezwungen, sich göttliche Gnade und göttliche Gabe selbst zu erkämpfen. Doch dann verdunkelt sich der Saal für eine raffinierte Multimedia-Show. Im gleißenden Scheinwerferkegel schmettert der fanatische Messias seine Heilslehre in das Auditorium. Immer härter wird die Sprache, immer schneller das Tempo. So müsste es den Machthabern in Montevideo eigentlich gefallen. Wir müssen die Welt erretten, donnert Pak. Niemals darf der Kommunismus die Welt erobern. Diese Erde, diese Welt gehört Gott. Sie ist von ihm geschaffen mit göttlichen Menschen. Verschwindet, hinweg mit euch, ihr Kommunisten. Am Ende geht Pak in die Vollen, schäumt er mit schwarz-weißen Gegenparolen. Geschichte heißt Kampf, deshalb sind Fortschritt und Entwicklung nur dann möglich, wenn der andere ausgerottet wird. Hexenjagd. Moon macht mobil. In der Moon-eigenen Estancia Redención bietet Pak seinem gestressten Publikum eine Atempause. Pralle Fleischberge am Rost warten auf 400 Gäste. Den traditionellen Asado kann sich nach jahrelanger Misswirtschaft der Militärs auch in Uruguay bis auf wenige Ausnahmen niemand mehr leisten. Moon freilich macht's möglich, zusammen mit jener Rinderoligarchie des Landes, die noch immer ihre eigenen Säbelrassler im Generalstab hat und ihre Gewinne ins Ausland verschiebt. Das Programm ist perfekt. Bei vollen Tischen und der Guarania, dem schmelzenden Lied zur Gitarre, schwinden selbst letztes Zaudern und Zögern. Ich bitte dich, folg mir ins Land der Träume, lässt der koreanische Parolenschmied den Mann in der Gaucho-Tracht singen. Causas Kosmovision, schwerer Wein und gepfefferter Salat, das vereint sich hier zu brisanter Mischung. Das Schöne ist, dass Sie ein Militär sind, hofiert dieser Alte den Oberst, denn wir sind im Krieg. Und Krieg heißt Krieg. Jawohl, Krieg, erwidert Pack, und dafür brauchen wir Soldaten. Die können Sie haben, meint der Alte, aber auch Generäle müssen her, und zwar Moon-Generäle. Richtig, lächelt der Asiate, und die beiden Prediger des Hasses sind sich einig. Die kollektiven Wahnideen lässt Moon von der Zeitung Ultima Noticias verbreiten, seiner aufwendigsten Investition in Uruguay. Die Redaktion liegt ganz auf der Linie der Militärs, riskiert neuerdings aber auch schon mal ein kritisches Wort. Die Optik muss stimmen, denn niemand kann wissen, wie schnell der politische Wechsel kommt. Ob sich der vielseitige Julian Safi, Moons Mann in Uruguay, dann als Herausgeber des Blattes noch halten kann, steht dahin. Doch noch ist Safi am Ruder. Seine Redakteure lässt er in die Tasten hämmern. Noch können die aus den USA importierten Rotationsmaschinen absurde Heilslehren in eine Gesellschaft schleusen, die Unversöhnlichkeit lernen soll. Auch Geschäftstüchtigkeit steht dem Glauben der Moon-Leute nicht im Wege. Das große Geld soll die Sekte durch das Ginseng-Monopol und im Waffenhandel gemacht haben. Für das Victoria Plaza Hotel legte Moon Millionen auf den Tisch. Nicht bekannt ist der Preis für jene Abrissruine eines Gebäudes, das eigentlich unter Denkmalschutz stehen sollte. Den Staatsbesitz haben die Militärs an den Koreaner veräußern lassen. So kann sich der clevere Julian Safi hier auch als Manager des jüngsten Großprojekts vorstellen. Stolz präsentiert er das Hochhausmodell eines Erweiterungsbaus. Nach Investitionen Moon sollen das Victoria Plaza in den profitträchtigsten Hotelgiganten Südamerikas verwandeln. In die Finanzierung ist eine der größten Handelsbanken Uruguays eingeschaltet. Die Aktienmehrheit hat Moon übernommen. Er führt die Geschäfte der Banco de Credito mit fast 20 Filialen. Staatschef General Alvarez ist es, der dem Selfmade Messias den Millionencoup ermöglichte, auch durch umfangreiche Steuerfreiheiten. Alvarez teilt das Konzept der Moons, ihre politische Ideologie, und es gibt Gerüchte über direkte Verbindungen seiner Familie zum Sektenführer. Die demokratische Opposition Uruguays spricht vom Ausverkauf des Vaterlands. Auch deshalb fordert sie die Räumung des Präsidentenpalastes. Immer wenn es Nacht wird, gehen die Schwerbewaffneten auf die Straße. Sie sollen Positionen halten, die auf Dauer unhaltbar sind. Die Uruguayer wissen das. Auch sie gehen auf die Straße, wenn es Nacht wird. Zu ihren Volksfesten strömen sie, um den parodistischen Gesängen der Maskierten zu lauschen. Im Harlekinskostüm lässt sich so manches sagen, was sonst strikt verboten ist. Noch nie war der politische Karneval in Montevideo so kämpferisch wie in diesem Jahr. Wo Meinungsfreiheit unterdrückt wird, sucht der Protest seine eigenen Wege. Aufbruchsstimmung. Die Rückkehr zum Verfassungsstaat will das Volk Uruguays, den demokratischen Wechsel nach argentinischem Vorbild.